Hey, what's happening?
Brother, what's up?
This is a groovy party, man.
Yeah,
I
brother,
can
like
dig
it.
it.
Stop. Right on.
Mother, there's too many of you cry. Brother, there's far too many of you die. You know we've got to find a way.
Good morning and welcome to the Earl
bring
Ingram
some
Show.
loving here
As
today.
always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. That's 855-752-4842. You can text us at that same number. Good morning to you, Carti. How you doing, man?
Pretty good. Talking to Mr. Bob Harvey, we're going to have on the air today with you.
All right, so you got him. That's great.
Yeah, I got him. He's going to be logging in a minute. He said he was having phone issues and whatnot.
Okay, well, that's great, man. I just want to say we've got a great show lined up for you this morning. If you can tell, my voice is a little strained because I'm a part of just a great production company called Capita Productions. And we actually did 4 shows this weekend. Capita Productions is a wonderful, wonderful troupe with live music, singing, dance, just a masterful performance. And so the 2025 edition of Capita Productions, We Are the Drum, kicked off this past weekend. Actually, we began it last Wednesday and Thursday. We did 2 shows for 2,400 students. And we did a show on Friday night, 2 shows Saturday, and then we did a 4:00 matinee yesterday. And we're going to follow that up this week with 2 more shows, Tuesday and Wednesday, for 2,400 more students, and then another show Friday evening, 2 more shows Saturday, and culminated all with the last show on Sunday. And I will tell you, those young people who performed and all the musicians and singers, kudos, and all the people who put the play together. They've been working since last September. And that's the quality of our play, the lighting, the sound, just par excellence. And so thanks to everybody from Capita Production for a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and all of the people in the community who showed up. Thank you all. So anyway, without any further ado, I want to welcome back the one and only Professor Bob Harvey. He's certainly back with much acclaim. There are many people who wanted to hear Professor Bob Harvey once again. So, Professor Harvey, welcome back, and thank you for accepting the invitation.
Thank you for having me, Earl.
Professor Harvey, you're in sunny Charlotte, North Carolina. It's going to be 50 degrees in Milwaukee today. It must mean it must be 100 in Charlotte.
It ought to be 63. So we've had cold weather down here too. So.
Hey, wait a minute. You're calling 63 cold?
It is to me. Anything below 70. Anything below 70 is cold. I put my thermals on when it gets 69 and below. Cold to me.
Well, you couldn't have survived up here last week. We had 10 days sub-zero.
Hey, I survived up there for 38 years in Milwaukee, so in other parts of Wisconsin, including the Cross. So, but I didn't like it.
So, but anyway, Professor Harvey, we had just a great conversation on last week, and so what you did, basically, we're going to pick up where we left off. We were actually talking about the history of our sojourn here in America, how we got here, what the process was, and we can pick it up from there, Professor Harvey. I think at towards the end we were talking about, how the Catholics saw what was taking place with the enslavement of blacks in this country, and they finally came out publicly and started talking about it. We can begin there.
Well, in 1493, Pope Alexander VI of the Catholic Church, proposed what he called a bull of demarcation, and then the church issued a papal bull dividing the world in half down the Atlantic Ocean between Spain and Portugal, the two top and strongest Catholic nations. And the reason they did that was that Spain and Portugal were starting to compete with the new discoveries in the New World, especially in South America, and also the newly found treasures along the coast of West Africa. And so to keep the two countries from fighting and going to war with each other, another reason why is because keep in mind that from 750 AD to 1492, the southern part of the Iberian Peninsula, which is Spain and Portugal, had been occupied by North Africans known as the Moors. If you know the story of Othello, that's part of what it's dealing with. So North African Moors, those are African Muslims, occupied the southern half of the peninsula for almost 700 years. And so they were finally kicked out around between 1491 and 1492 by, armies under the control and under the support of the Catholic Church. And so the Pope wanted to make sure that his two most powerful nation states did not go to war and weaken themselves and possibly be conquered again. And I love teaching that lecture to my classes over the years because it let people know that, of the African connection. For example, at one time, the Iberian Peninsula, the future countries of Spain and Portugal, were occupied by another African group, the Carthaginians. Carthage is located in modern-day Tunisia. It's the home of Hannibal. They had conquered that region and driven the Romans out. And so they had occupied it. Spain was a colony of Carthage for several centuries before the Punic Wars finally drove them out. And so there is an African connection to it. Blacks were already in Spain and Portugal long before the slave trade started. Some were free, others were slaves. So there's that's why I say when you start talking about the 1619 Project, it is beautiful information and beautiful work from what I've seen. But it overlooks some of the other important history and contribution that Africans made to the New World, including the discoveries of the New World. So that's an important history. There's another one that I never did a lot of research on, but sometime around the 13th century AD, we find that there were possibly Malayan from the Kingdom of Mali. That was one of the powerful West African kingdoms, the Kingdom of Mali, actually sent a fleet of ships and supposedly they came to the New World. Now, one of the evidence that they link with that is that they landed somewhere around the Yucatan Peninsula. And if you know anything about the Yucatan Peninsula, in southern Mexico, there are some large stone heads called the Olmec culture stone heads. They have wide nose, thick lips, and comb-resistant hair. Now, where did they come from? Did the Malayan fleet actually make it to the New World? We don't know. But there's a theory about that, just like there's one dealing with the settlement along the coast of Peru and in other regions of western of the southwestern part of South America. That there was they called the papyrus theory. That Egyptians, who was excellent seafarers, traveled and managed to make it there, and that's why you have step pyramids built by the Inca in that region. I mean, there's some fascinating history out there that's lost, Earl, because no one has bothered to pursue those ideas and those theories. But it's just something to throw out there, and all we have as a result of that are those Stonehenge statues, and we know about the pyramids that were built by the Inca, and apparently the Maya and the Aztec in Mexico and the Toltec cultures also benefited from that. So there's some fascinating history there to see that long before the Mayflower, Africans had already been in other parts of the world.
You know, Professor.
And that's the important history.
You know, Professor Harvey, that is really eye-opening because, you know, that's certainly not the history that's been taught in this nation. And the fact that in order for Africans to be able to transform or get to other parts of the world, they had to have built ships. There weren't airplanes. And so they had to be some of the first people, I guess, in order to move outside of their continent, to be able to build ships to sail to get to those continents. Is that correct?
But Earl, there's another African connection.
So, Professor Harvey, hang on 1 second. 855-752-4842. I am once again, just excited to have the one and only Professor Bob Harvey, who is a historian of American history, African history, and all sorts of other history. He's with us once again, 855-752-4842 on a Motown Monday on the Earl Ingram Show.
that we may see too far, oh, oh Lord, grant us our love and peace, oh yes, and let all dissension cease. Let our faith increase, oh yeah, and Master, yes, yeah, oh please, open our eyes, open our eyes.
All right, welcome back to Motown Monday on the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. Text us at that same number. Once again, I'm joined by the one and only Professor Bob Harvey, all the way from sunny Charlotte, North Carolina. And certainly we're talking once again. If you don't know, I had Professor Harvey on last week. He lit up the airways as he always does. And so I'm excited that he accepted the invitation to come back. He is a historian, American history, African history, and you know, all sorts of other things. So it is an honor to have him back on the airways. Professor Harvey, before we went to break, I was asking you about the fact that, you know, that Africans, in order for them to leave, you know, that where they were, they had to build ships and travel across the oceans and the seas. And that's not kind of what I was taught. I mean, I was taught that, you know, people traveled to Africa and, you know, that's how Africans left their shores and were able to move across the world. But you say it's different.
Well, Earl, you take a look at if anyone knows anything about the National Geographic and world history, you know, how did the people in New Guinea, thousands of miles away, they're black. You know, they're just like some of the black folk on the continent. How did they get there? They didn't certainly get on those skis and ski across. You know, how did they get there? But it goes back even deeper than that, Earl. About 10 years, 15 years ago, I started teaching because I started doing research and I was fascinated by the works of the Leakey family. Richard Leakey, Louis Leakey, and of course Richard Leakey and his wife Mary Leakey, their family, who were both British and Kenya subjects, and the works of Johansen and others dealing with the origin of man. Now scholars have finally accepted the fact that mankind originated in Africa. And I don't care what color they are, but I do know that if you stay near the sun long enough,
oh yeah,
things change. You just change. I mean,
yeah, melanin.
I was shocked when I first went into the service and trained down at Fort Benning, Georgia, in the summer, doing that infantry training for 13 weeks. When I would roll back my sleeves and roll them up, I was 3 shades darker.
Right.
And I'm more like chocolate brown. So if you stay out there in the sun, you're gonna change color. It's just that's the way your melanin gonna kick in. You're gonna get darker. So you have this history when you start studying, you know, prehistoric primates like Australopithecus, you know, Zygoanthropus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus. All of those were early primates that were the forerunner of man. And when you start explaining, my grandfather, I don't know whether he never figured out whether he was a Garveyite or what, but he believed that the God of Eden was found in Africa. And when I would ask my grandfather the question, he died in 1960, but I was in the 6th and 7th grade, and I was fascinated by what he was saying because I heard a couple of his sermons because he was a Baptist preacher. And Papa would always, say this, that the Garden of Eden was in Africa. Now, I'm not trying to steal anybody's history, but his thing was, you got all those animals down there. And when you get old enough, son, and you start doing more reading, you find out where the largest collection of animals are in the world, the largest variety. And yet we have them all over the world, but they're located, the largest numbers are located right there in Africa, especially West Africa. So there were some fascinating things that I was pushed at an early age that we couldn't study in high school because they didn't teach it in high school. When they talk about woke, getting rid of the woke ideology and DEI, what they're really telling you is, let's go back to the days of Jim Crow when we didn't even talk about it. The state of North Carolina has already drafted up a preliminary history book that tries to hide anything that Africa did positive other than produce slaves. That's where they're going. They're trying to put a good face on slaves that try to say that they were happy. They're going back to the days of U.B. Phillips, one of the renowned Southern historians, who'd like to think that black people were just happy-go-lucky and having a good time, ignoring the fact that between the 15th century when blacks first got here, back when they were on the boat coming over, they resisted. And when you read Herbert Asseker's American Negro Slave Revolts and other works that talk about the slave rebellion, like Confrontations Black and White by Lerone Bennett, you begin to see that this was not an easy affair, that they fought every step of the way.
Professor Harvey, hang on.
And they were fighting coming over here, and when they got here, they continued to fight.
Professor Harvey, hang on 1 second. 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. The indomitable Professor Bob Harvey on the Earl Ingram Show, a Motown Monday on the Earl Ingram Show.
This is our broken road. Love's last episode. There's nowhere to go. Oh no, you made your choice.
All right, welcome back to
Now
Untitled Monday
it's up to
on the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. That's 855-752-4842. You can text us at that same number. It's Monday. That means a Motown Monday. I'm joined once again by the one and only Professor Bob Harvey, all the way from sunny Charlotte, North Carolina. Professor Harvey, we got a caller. Let's bring him on quickly, and then we'll let you respond. Hey, good morning to you, Brother Khaled. How you doing, sir? You have a question or comment?
Hello, Professor Harvey. I would like to ask you a question. Since it's Black History Month, you have limited time. I'm like, there was at the NFL halfway show, Kendrick Lamar made a statement. He mentioned the 40 acres and a mule is more than the music. Are you familiar with that history and the details surrounding that?
Yes, sir. The 40 acres and a mule was a concept that was put forward by Republican congressmen at the close of the American Civil War. And this was during the time of what you call Reconstruction, a period that lasted from roughly, some say 1869, but I go all the way back to 1865 with the passage of the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, and going all the way up until about 1890. Now, during that time period, what Republicans were saying was that if they could give black folks, most of the black folk at that time had been in slavery, they knew agriculture, that if they were given 40 acres of land and a mule to plow the land, that they could take care of themselves and it wouldn't need a whole lot of federal support or state support, for that matter, to help rebuild the South. So, and the other reason they wanted to do that was there were too many blacks heading up north, and a lot of those northern Republican politicians didn't want that. Remember, prior to the Civil War and leading all the way up until pretty much the 1970s, the Democratic Party had a monopoly on the political structure in the South. And during the Reconstruction period, northern Republicans knew that. And they felt that the only way to create a Republican political party in the South was to empower black folks. And what they were talking about were black men. Because remember, the 15th Amendment of 1870 gave black men the right to vote. It didn't give white women the right to vote, or women, period. It just gave black men the right to vote. And since most black folk lived in the South at the time, the Republicans saw a chance to gain power in the South. And one of the ways to do it was to keep them down there tied to the land. And that's where the whole thing about the 40 acres and a mule came from. And the question was, where do you get the land from? And that thing was to take it from slaveholders who owned all that land and had slavery prior to the war. That's the way to break their back. Take away their land, and you've already taken away their slaves. So it was an economic and a political move to break the back of the people that had caused the Civil War, Southern whites.
Did it ever happen, Professor Harvey? Did they ever live up to it? Did they ever give the 40 acres
in
and a
one
mule?
or two cases? In some cases, dealing with with the federal government and the bureau, they established a bureau rehabilitate and to go ahead and bring in blacks into the economic fold in the South. There were some who did get it, but many of them lost their land eventually. They also had a program whereby they found land that was just left vacant and conquered by the Union Army, and they allowed blacks to gain by that land, because you remember some blacks who had served in the Civil War. Many of them, had earned a salary, and there was an organization called the Freedmen's Bureau. And the Freedmen's Bureau set up black banks, helped to set up schools, but they also had to set up economic plans to help incorporate blacks into the country. And the way to do that was to get land for them. So in some cases, they did get it. In others, they allowed them to find land that was vacant, whether the master had been killed off or driven off or whatever, and they were allowed to go in there and buy some of that land. But certainly by the turn of the century, most of that land had been taken back over by Southern whites.
So if you're just joining us, my guest is the one and only Professor Bob Harvey. Brother Collett was asking the question, Professor Harvey, because he said that, when they were go ahead, Brother Collett, explain why you asked that question.
Well, one reference was made that after President Lincoln was assassinated, the president that came after him came and manipulated and had a lot of the settlers that were thriving to sell the land and build their own places of being able to stay was systematically taken away.
By the president that came after the assassination of Lincoln. That's the point he's trying to get to. Whether or not that is true. Professor Harvey, did we lose you?
Because he was interfering with the federal policy. The radical Republicans in Congress are the ones who pushed the agenda to empower blacks in the South and to break the back of the political monopoly that the Democratic Party had on the South. The only way to do that is to empower black men. And so, there was some land that was given out, but and Johnson tried to stop it. You remember, Johnson succeeded him, but Johnson was from the South. He was from Tennessee. And Lincoln, the reason Lincoln got him as his vice president for the second term is because he was trying to find a way to unite the nation. Had Lincoln lived, Lincoln would have never approved the 14th Amendment, and he certainly wouldn't have approved the 15th Amendment, and he would not have approved giving that land at 40 acres of the mule. Lincoln was opposed to any of that. And he was opposed to most citizenship, which was granted by the 14th Amendment. Lincoln was opposed to that because he felt that blacks were not sophisticated enough to be citizens. Now, he granted certain people like Frederick Douglass, even Harriet Tubman, and blacks who had served in the military, which was 186,000 strong. 186,000 African-American soldiers fought in the Civil War. 38,000 of them died. 22 of them were awarded the Medal of Honor for valor. So Lincoln felt that if you had been in the military and 25% of the Union Navy, which was quite large at the time, were black. So those individuals who served, Lincoln felt, and certain select blacks educated, he felt that they could be given citizenship. But for most black folk, Lincoln had no plans. Now, I'm not saying he didn't believe that they should under his breath, but he had no plans of making them citizens.
See, Professor Harvey,
definitely have been opposed to the 14th Amendment.
So that's in contradiction to what has been taught. What has been taught is that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, and I remember.
Well, let's put it this way: he issued a proclamation, and it was really an executive order. A proclamation, he just proclaimed them, but proclamation didn't mean a damn thing because all the Confederates did was to give them the bird and tell them to go to hell, because in order for the proclamation to work, the Union Army had to go in there and defeat the South. Remember, the Emancipation Proclamation came out. He had it in his drawer in the spring of 1862, but he hadn't won any kind of major victory. So in the fall of 1862, they managed to get a draw at the Battle of Antietam. And with that draw, he decided it was time to end, try to find a way to break the back of the Confederacy. And the way to break the back was to take care of their most prized asset, slaves. And why did he do it? He didn't do it for moral reasons. He did it for military reasons. He saw that every time the Union Army rolled up to the battlefield between 1861 and up to 1862, every time the Union Army rolled up to the do battle with the Confederates, who were some of the first people they saw digging the trenches, hauling the ammunition, hauling in food, cleaning up the battlefield, collecting the Confederate dead? Who did they see? Blacks, who were working in the ammunition factories, the shipbuilding yard for the few Confederate ships that they had, doing all the labor, growing the food to feed the Confederate Army. Who was doing it? The slaves. So he felt that the best way to do that was to break their back. So it was going after contraband. See, the Emancipation Proclamation sees the slave as a contraband of war. They're not human cargo, they're contrabands of war. And John Hope Franklin talks about that beautifully in his work, The Emancipation Proclamation. But so does Lerone Bennett, Carter G. Woodson, even W.B. Du Bois talks about it in his works.
So, Professor Harvey, is it safe to say that the wealth of the South was generated and created on the backs of slaves, cheap labor?
Yes,
labor.
That was the backbone of it. Remember, the two most expensive commodities that the South had,
cotton.
and if you look at the 1860 census and study the economic data, the two most expensive products that the South had were their slaves and cotton. And that's why it was called the Cotton Kingdom. And cotton was the number one economic product of the nation in 1860. So both of those commodities, but the person that planted, picked it, harvested, processed it, were the slaves, that cotton that made them king.
And so, Professor Harvey,
those were the major products.
And free labor, because
if you talk to the slaveholders, they would say no, because their thing is, 3 hops in a cot. They fed them, they took care of their well-being, and the whole bit, and they bred them so that they could make sure that they had held the slave. So the well-being of the slave was important. And the best way to do this is to have a very strict code that if any slave broke it, you made an example of those slaves. And that's what they did to control the rest of them.
Professor Harvey,
and when you do that in through a couple of generations, you come away with a population that accepts that degree of oppression to just work and survive.
Professor Harvey,
people will do it.
I got to get you to hold that thought. 855-752-4842. It is always so wonderful to have Professor Bob Harvey grace these airways. And as I said the other day, I'm going to make sure that Professor Harvey's voice is heard more and more through Civic Media Airways. 855-752-4842. Your one and only Professor Bob Harvey on a Motown Monday on the Earl Ingram Show.
Just call on the messing up the
All
water.
right, welcome back to Motown Monday on the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. That's 855-752-4842. Text us at that same number. My guest is the one and only Professor Bob Harvey of Charlotte, North Carolina. You know, Professor Harvey, then it's safe to say that capitalism was built on the backs of slaves. Is it safe to say that?
Well, you can say that to a point, Earl, but it wouldn't be totally true because there were a lot of different ways that capitalism was built in this country. But in the Southern agriculture, certainly that backbone was built on the backs of slaves because they were free labor. You see, what you had in the South was a split dichotomy because on one hand, the labor force that existed in the South, largely of poor whites, because most black folk that lived in the South were slaves, and those that were free were so minuscule, it didn't have an impact on the economy. But certainly you had free labor and you had slave labor. And 90% of black folk prior to 1850 lived in the South. And you have to also remember, and one could say also, that slavery had an impact on certainly helped to establish the nation. Why? Because of the original 13 colonies. And I'm talking now New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and then in the middle Atlantic states of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and then the southern states of Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. Those were the original 13 colonies. Earl, prior to the American Revolution, every single one of them had slavery, all of them. So America, when Condoleezza Rice said that the America, when you talk about race relations in this country and racism is built into the American DNA. Well, part of that story has to deal with the slaves that helped to build up the original 13 colonies. And when the colonies transitioned in the 18th century to becoming states, and then later on, the nation, the United States of America, they were at the backbone of it. They were in all the battles from Bunker Hill and Breeds Hill in 1775 to Lexington and Concord. They were there. They were at Valley Forge. They were at all of the major battles. They were at Yorktown. They were there. When John Paul Jones and the little small, Continental Navy was at sea, blacks were on board those ships. They were there. So the story that's often told. I mean, I was sitting there watching a documentary the other night on all of those soldiers and stuff that landed on D-Day, thousands of them. But nobody talks about the fact that also going ashore and then driving those boats that landed those guys ashore were black. And the people that had to clean up the beaches after all the soldiers had moved inland, between June 6th all the way up through to August, cleaning up those beaches, going inside those tanks and cleaning out all those dead, broken bodies out, were African-American soldiers. When Montgomery and Patton and Eisenhower and Bradley and those guys started moving inland and going into Belgium and heading into Germany, those armies had to be fed. The people that drove most of those trucks, it was the Red Ball Express. Most of their drivers were black. So, when we start talking about the history, it's a history that's lost, stolen, strayed, as Bill Cosby once said. That history, we were there, but we don't always get the recognition. And so, that's the story that has to be told. So whether somebody's trying to push a woke movement or DEI, that history will not be silenced and it will not be denied because it's American history, not just African American history. It's American history. And it doesn't mean that other people aren't put down, because all those kids that died on those beaches in Normandy, all those young white soldiers, there were also Native Americans that died that day too, because they were integrated. So were Mexican American soldiers. Their stories don't always get told, but they were there too.
Professor.
And so it's a cry to let people know that all people have played a role in making this country great. Not as much as some, because young white males have paid the greatest price.
Professor Harvey.
There's no doubt about that.
Professor Harvey, we have to leave it there, and I want people to know it's a beginning, not an end, with you and this conversation. Thank you very much. We'll talk soon. Up next, Reggie Jackson, the great griot, of Black history in the city of Milwaukee and well known all across the nation, will grace these airways next on the Earl Ingram Show.
I'm confused, being misused every day. Just sitting in rockets to Mars. Our people on Earth, they starve. How long are we gonna let this keep going on?
I think he's still on the line, but he's not on air.
Who, Reggie?
Let me see. Let me do this real quick. Go ahead.
No, you're hooking up Reggie Jackson now, right?
Reggie, yeah, let me get him on the line.
Yeah. Bob is done.
So is he doing StreamYard?
Yeah.
He's doing okay. Let me get Reggie together. This Reggie Jackson.
Hey man, it's only one Earl Ingram Show, right? Hey, but
Hey,
good stuff,
Mr.
right?
Reggie Jackson, how are you today?
Good. Who's this?
Good morning. This is Earl Ingram's producer. This is Carti. I'm just
you know,
calling
when-
to see if
when
you got the
he's on,
StreamYard link for today.
If Reggie on,
How did you send
I
it?
don't get a lot of
Through your
calls.
phone. You should have it in your text message.
They be listening.
Okay, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining in today.
Okay, you're welcome.
Alrighty.
Well, that's what we were taught. And what did you say, Professor Harvey put on a different slant, didn't he? I know. Hey, you know,
You got Reggie Jackson on the line.
Hey, Reggie, how you doing, sir?
Earl, I'm good. How are you, man?
I'm doing fine, man. Welcome back, man.
Yeah, good to be back. Earl.
Man, what is going on, man? Did you see what Trump did to the 4-star general, man?
Not a surprise, man.
I know, man. You're a military veteran. We know what's behind all of this, right?
Yeah, of course. It's a joke, Earl. I mean, it's an absolute
Well,
joke.
I guess I want to ask you, as a historian, and we're watching all of this take place. How does it make you feel, man? As a man who, again, was in the military, you're watching what is transpiring in this nation. What are your thoughts, Reggie, about the future of the nation as it stands right now?
We are screwed, Earl. We are royally screwed, man. I don't see how we're going to come back from all of this foolishness that Trump and Musk are pulling off right now. They are literally dismantling the U.S. government as we know it, piece by piece, and people are applauding them for doing it.
Yeah,
so I don't see how we're going to come back from it.
Well, some of the people that are applauding aren't even aware that they're in the crosshairs themselves.
They don't care, Earl. That's the problem. They don't care if they're in the crosshairs.
How can they not care?
They're going to be collateral damage, but they don't really care.
Well,
as I was, sharing with my wife, if the people that they hate are being harmed, that's all that matters to them.
So are you saying then at the root of a lot of this is just hate?
Obviously, it's hate. Hate of people of color that have had the audacity to speak their minds, over the recent, 5-6 years, whatever. Hate of immigrants that they claim are taking their jobs, which is foolishness.
Hey, we're getting ready to go on. We're getting ready to go on. All right, welcome back to a Motown Monday on the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. That's 855-752-4842. And I want to thank Professor Bob Harvey all the way from, warm Charlotte, North Carolina, for gracing these airways on the first hour. But, man, no better 1-2 punch than the follow-up Professor Bob Harvey with another giant. In his own right, Mr. Reggie Jackson, who's an award-winning journalist and speaker, researcher, and writer with a deep, comprehensive knowledge of how our country's racial hierarchy developed historically and its impact on our lives today. Reggie has won so many different awards, too numerous for me to take the time out to talk about today. But welcome back, dear brother. How are you?
Thank you for having me back, Earl. I'm doing well. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Man, phone lines open as always at 855-752-4842. Reggie, want to do something a little bit different with you than what we did with Professor Harvey the first hour. The first hour, we went back historically and talking about different things that have transpired in the history of this nation. With you, I want to talk about today and where we are. You're a historian, very renowned in your own right. But where is this nation today, Reggie, on race, on actually the American people themselves? What do you see with where we are today?
Earl, I see America being where America's always been when it comes to race issues, particularly as it relates to black people. We haven't changed. People, you know, convinced themselves when Barack Obama was elected that we were in a so-called post-racial America, that we had solved all of those issues, but we've never had an open, honest conversation about race in this country. And when we tried to over the last, 5 years after George Floyd was murdered, you see what happened. The backlash against that shows you that America has really not made the progress that people have been convinced that they were. And I tell people, listen, the election of Barack Obama was not, a sign that we had gotten over race, because if you look at the exit poll results from 2008, Barack Obama received 42% of the white vote, Earl. That means 58% of white people that voted in 2008 did not want Barack Obama to be their president. And when he ran again in 2012 for re-election,
39.
that number went down to 39%. So that's
Right.
61% of white people did not want him to be their president. So how can you say that that's, a sign of a post-racial America because a black man was elected when a majority of white people, a huge majority of white people, did not want him to be their president?
Reggie, I always hear, many whites say to me, "Isn't it getting better? Isn't it getting better?" And my response always is, I can't buy it's getting better, because it never should have been where it was in the first place. So it can't ever be that it's getting better. The fact that what transpired in this nation and some of the things that continue to happen to people solely because of the color of their skins in this nation should be unacceptable. It's unacceptable anywhere in the world. It definitely should be unacceptable in America, which claims to be the beacon, of light in the world.
Yeah, I completely agree, Earl. One of my favorite quotes related to that is what Malcolm X said. He said, "You can't stick a knife 9 inches into a man's back, pull it out 3 inches, and say you're making progress." That's not how it works. But that's literally what's going on. People, things have gotten so much better, not like it used to be. Things always change. The one constant in life is change. Everything changes, Earl. Nothing is like it used to be, because people are constantly evolving in terms of their thoughts and their views and the way they treat each other. But, we just had an incident, a little over a week ago, where a young biracial woman went to get an oil change for her car. Something as simple as that. She received a call from that place where she got the oil change saying that, one of the techs had left a tool in her vehicle and they wanted to come and pick it up. So she checked the vehicle. There was no tools left. And what she ends up finding out was that they were sending somebody there to remove a sticker from her window, because the tech that did the oil change, or someone there, wrote the N-word on her sticker. And they were trying to come and remove the sticker before she noticed it, but she saw it before they got there. And then, of course, they said, the dealer is like, well, we don't approve of that. We think that's horrible. But that happened. That was a week and a half ago, Earl. That's a sign of the times. I tell people, like, listen, I'm not a pessimist or an optimist. I'm a pragmatist. I look at things from the evidence that you present to me right now. What does that tell me? And all of the signs when it comes to race relations right now tell me that we are in very bad shape as a country, and we have not made progress. We're backtracking, in fact.
So Reggie, 2 years ago, affirmative action was wiped off the table. And it was wiped off the table because 60 some odd years, whites said that it was discriminatory against white people to have affirmative action, and that wasn't fair, that wasn't right. Never mind that 400 years of it was what brought about affirmative action, and yet only 60 years of it, they wipe it out. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is the one thing that Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans have attacked and clearly stated that our number one issue with this election is to do away with diversity, equity, and inclusion. So all universities, major corporations are being bullied into doing away with what, Reggie? Diversity? isn't this nation diverse? I mean, it's. I don't know what is the definition of diversity, Reggie. Maybe I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know, but I'm sure you know.
It does take a genius to understand that the diversity in terms of how we look at diversity in this country, look at the demographics of the nation, Earl. We are a very, very diverse. We have people from so many different spaces on this planet, as our population. We're a very diverse nation. And, the one thing with diversity, America's always been diverse, Earl. Since its beginnings, it was a diverse place. People from so many different places have made this place their home, some against their will, of course. But I always say that, the problem with diversity is that America has never embraced that diversity, has never seen it as a strength. They've seen it as a weakness. And this conversation in recent years about DE&I, people talk about diversity, equity, inclusion as if they know something about it. But most people that are talking about it, that are criticizing it, don't really know anything about it, Earl. And I always say, if you want to talk to me about diversity, equity, inclusion, people want to debate me about it. I say, listen, I can't debate you if you don't know the subject matter. I'm not going to debate you if you don't know what you're talking about. I'm not going to waste my time doing that because, this is the work that I've done for a number of years, doing diversity, equity, inclusion, training, workshops, things of that nature, facilitated dialogue with people from around the state of Wisconsin. And people have embraced the ability to sit down and talk to people that are different than themselves, Earl. That's from my experience. But I know at the same time, there are people that didn't want to be in those spaces. And from what I can tell your audience, Earl, the group that was generally missing from those sessions when I would travel around, particularly the facilitated dialogue sessions, where we have people talk about, their differences and how they can come together and, find some common ground. The people that were generally missing from those sessions were almost always the same demographic, white men. They just didn't show up, Earl. Very few of them would show up. White men have been told that they are victims, that they are the victims of reverse discrimination, that affirmative action was designed to hurt white men, ignoring the fact that white women were the greatest beneficiaries of affirmative action, or ignoring the fact that affirmative action was only needed because of stuff that had been done in the past. It was a reparative tool, Earl. That's what affirmative action was. And DE&I initiatives are designed to look at, spaces that people occupy and ask, is this space really expressed in the same way that America is? Does it look like America? Because if it doesn't, then there's something wrong.
So, Reggie, let me ask you, because the attack on DEI has not only been aggressive, it's been angry, it's been hostile. It's like there's a war. And when you hear Donald Trump and others, this is a war and we're shutting down DEI and that's over. We're going to bring it to an end. Why, with all the other things going on in this nation, the fact that they've singled that out, Reggie, some of us know what's behind that, right?
Yeah. Here's my opinion on that, Earl. After George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis, there were widespread protests all around the country, even all around the world. And one of the things that I noticed was that white people started to become interested in hearing the stories of people of color more after that, right? They wanted to hear about the Black experience, learn about it. And they bought books, they listened to podcasts, they attended events, all these different things. And I think that scared some white people in the country because now, your cousin Bob, who has always been in lockstep with you about racial issues, now has a different opinion. He has the exact opposite opinion. He feels that racism is bad. And so now you're having conversations you've never had before. And I think that fear of white people crossing over the line and having interest in these marginalized groups that they never had before really brought a lot of fear into the hearts and minds of a lot of people. And I think that's the crux of what this argument is about, Earl.
And Reggie, many of those who felt that way have interaction with Black people, probably on a daily basis. And many inside of this society don't have interaction with Blacks at all on a daily basis. And that's part of the root of it. 855-752-4842. Our phone lines are open as always. My guest is none other than Mr. Reggie Jackson, award-winning journalist, author, speaker, researcher, on and on and on a Motown Monday on the Earl Ingram Show.
When will I see you again? Are we in love? Or just friends? Is this my beginning? Or is this the end? When will I see you again? When will I see you again? Sweet, sweet love, when will I see you again? Come, come, when will I see you again? Oh, these eyes just cry every night for you. And these arms, darling, don't hold you once again. The hurt's on me, yeah. I would never be free, no, baby. You made a promise to me, yeah. And you
Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show, Motown Monday on the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. My good friend, Mr. Reggie Jackson, is on the docket, journalist, award-winning journalist, speaker, researcher, author, on and on and on. Let's go to the phone lines. Brendan from New Jersey. Brendan, thank you. You say what?
Yeah, good morning. I just wanted to share, a thought that it just saddens me when I hear this conversation, because we're supposed to be better than this as a country, as people. And as somebody who lives in New Jersey, who occasionally drives up to New York and sees that Statue of Liberty in the harbor, I just wonder where people have gone away from this country being a melting pot. And as far as everything else that's going on, well, I mean, it's a cult of personality that's sitting in the White House now. He purposely used people's prejudice, their hatred, their fear, every tool he could put on the table, he did. And I'm sorry, as somebody who is, I was born in Ireland, adopted, brought over here, but I am white. I'm a white male, and it's just sad to see what's going on in our country. I mean, I try to go out and I try to always be friendly to people, everyone, and I think we've just forgotten that. But I have to, in my heart, hold on to the hope that this country will get back on track. I'm not saying all our problems will be fixed, but every day when I get up, I have to have it in my heart that this country will get back to where it belongs.
You know,
Day,
Brendan, thank you very much for the call. You know, Reggie, we need to have conversations with people like Brendan, right?
Absolutely. Thanks for those comments, Brendan. Can I just respond real quick?
Go ahead, Reggie.
You know what? Listen, hope is not enough. We can't just hope because, you know, the signs are, you know, staring us in the face that we're in the wrong place, Brendan. You know, obviously, you know, when people talk about the melting pot, I always respond in the same way. Not everybody was allowed into that melting pot. We as African-American people were not allowed to be part of that melting pot. We didn't come over to the Statue of Liberty. We were dragged over in chains on slaving ships. And so our experience here has not been a representation of this so-called melting pot of America.
All right, let's go to CJ. CJ, you're up.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call, Earl and Dr. Harvey.
This is not Dr. Harvey. This is Reggie Jackson. It's not Professor Harvey.
Oh, okay. We switched. Well, thank you. Reggie and Earl, I'm wondering why the Democrats for 40 years have voted for Democrats. The black community in record number did not this time. Black men voted for Trump.
Black men did not vote for Trump.
No,
they did not vote for Trump.
A small percentage of them
it was
did.
A record.
Check your math. Check your math.
A record percentage.
What is that percentage? What is that percentage, CJ?
21%.
Absolutely not.
And you know,
it wasn't that much.
Well,
and even if it was, that means 79% did not. Do the math, man.
You guys don't want to hear a question.
No, we don't want to hear
you
fiction.
Want to talk over me.
Hey CJ, we're not gonna we don't want to hear fiction. We're talking truth. Okay, so whatever you feel, and whatever you think doesn't make it the truth. So go ahead.
Well, let's just say that you laughed at me the first time I said that black men are going to turn to, and they did, and they turned conservative, and they believe in it.
Well, okay, Reggie, you want to first off, bring him down. Reggie, did black men turn to Donald Trump and conservatism?
No, they did not. A small percentage of black men voted for Donald Trump. I mean, just check the math. Even if let's just assume that his numbers were correct. If 21%, which it wasn't even close to 21%, did vote for Donald Trump, that means 79% voted for Kamala Harris. So how is that a turn towards conservatism when, according to his data that he's using, which I don't know where he got it from, shows clearly that nearly 80% of black men voted for Kamala Harris, not Donald Trump. Black men did not turn. Some black men.
CJ, respond to what he just said.
Well, the mere fact that the Democrats continue.
Hey, CJ, this is not the Democrats. Hey, CJ, respond to the statement you made in the beginning. Blacks voted for Donald Trump when he just told you 80% of blacks did not. You totally dismissed it.
You know why? Because they watched Kamala turn to illegal.
It's Kamala, not Kamala.
Illegals.
Hey, CJ. Hey, CJ. Hey, CJ. Again, you're CJ.
Complain about it.
Hey, bring him down. Hey, CJ, you're talking to two black men. Okay? As if you're speaking for black men. He just told you 80% of blacks did not vote for Donald Trump. You know, what part of that don't you understand? 855-752-4842 is the number. It's part of the reason why, Reggie, it's so hard to have the conversations, because a guy like the last caller is so locked into ignorance that he doesn't want to see, any change. 855-752-4842 is the number. It's Motown Monday on the Earl Ingram Show. My guest is one and only Reggie Jackson. We'll be right back.
Break my word.
All right, I got your promo. Give me 1 second to bring this up. Okay, it is recorded in the back. There we go. All right, whenever you're ready. Can you see this, or should I make
Yeah, no, it's good.
Okay.
Musk is seeking details on federal employees while Trump has ousted Brown as Attorney General. What can Democrats do to regain American influence? Join me, Earl Ingram and Sandy Williams, as we discuss these pressing issues on tomorrow.
Awesome. Perfect. And it's crazy because I looked at the number, it's 19%. It's not 21%.
Yeah,
You know
but you know what?
It depends on which exit
That
poll you
means
looked at. I just
that
looked at
means
CNN and it's
81%
21%.
didn't vote for Donald Trump.
Yeah,
That's the bottom line.
CNN's exit polls show 21% voted for Trump. So it depends on which exit polls you're looking at.
Good loving ain't easy. Good loving ain't easy. Good loving ain't easy to come by. Oh, darling, not the kind you offer me. It's just not to be found. 'Cause we're working on a building, no one can hear them. Not what we got. Good loving ain't easy.
Back to a Motown Monday on the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. That's 855-752-4842. Text us at that same number. My guest is the one and only Reggie Jackson. Again, you know, Reggie, I'm going to go right back to the phone lines. Let's bring in Mike from Kenosha. Good morning to you, Mike. How you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm enjoying a wonderful Motown Monday. Can I make a Motown request?
Yes, sir.
Rare Earth.
Oh, Rare Earth.
Is, yeah, it is a Motown supported band.
Yeah, I know, man. I know. Get ready.
So,
You're talking about Get Ready.
there you go. And,
All right.
and Celebrate and a few others too. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, you know, lies, and more lies are, you know, I don't care if it's Benghazi, the Russian hoax, the locker up, the stolen election. They are still being echoed yet today by right-wing influencers on right-wing media. I heard it over the weekend. I heard it last week before. And, you know, Brandon posed an interesting point in his call earlier. You know, we all have a sense of right and wrong. You know, we all have that compass, that moral compass inside us. But yet, for some reason, these right-wingers, they're ignoring their own common sense, their own, you know, they're choosing to be ignorant, in my opinion. I know it's kind of a harsh thing to say, but, you know, what we're seeing in this takeover, this tyranny, for anybody to say that this is fair and this is how people should be treated by, you know, other human beings, you know, they neglect to recognize, you know, the Sermon of the Mount, which is the teachings of Christ. They totally ignore all this. They totally ignore equal application of the laws. My question that I'd love to pose on CJ and Mark and a few of the other right-wingers is, are we no longer a nation of laws in where we now cower to the power of one man? Is that how in any way is that symbolic of the United States of America as we know?
Well, you know,
it just doesn't. Go ahead.
Well, you know, Mike, I don't, you know, I don't want to get us off the mark, and the mark is we're talking about race in this nation. And so I do agree with you. I mean, we know what Donald Trump is doing. A lot of us as people of color, we see what Donald Trump is doing as, you know, certainly at the root of it is racism, doing away with DEI, the firing of the 4-star general for no reason other than the fact that Donald Trump believed he's a DEI hire, and the fact that across the board, Donald Trump and many other Republicans clearly want to see these things wiped out. You know, yes, I agree that, you know, who and what Donald Trump is, but Reggie, is it bigger than one man? Is it bigger than the Republicans?
Absolutely, Earl. You know, these are just symptoms of the disease that America has and has had, you know, since its beginnings. Its basic foundation was based on racism. Listen, all we have to do is just open an American history book and look at how Native Americans were treated, by the English when they first arrived on these shores. Look at how people from Africa were dragged here in chains to understand that those mindsets have not changed all that much. We like to tell a story that's mythological story of America is, the land of the free and the home of the brave and liberty and justice for all. But I tell people, listen, that doesn't work with me because I know I have factual information about the fact that my family was enslaved in this country. I even know the name of the people and their history of the people who enslaved my family. So you can't sell that story to me. But most Americans have been fed that story and believe it and don't understand that today is directly connected to yesterday because those mindsets have not changed. I tell people that you can change laws, but you can't legislate morality. And as far as, morals, the same people that brought us over in chains claim to be Christians, Earl. They claim to be Christians.
Yeah, I know.
And so, this idea of Christianity somehow absolving you of wrongdoing, it just doesn't work.
Hey, Mike, thank you for the call. Let's go to Bill from WAUK. Good morning to you, Bill. You say what?
I want to hear your reaction to my statement. I really think Donald Trump is going to be easy to deal with, and here's what I mean. I think it's real easy. We should get a lot of Ukraine flags, Ukraine colors.
Hey, Bill.
To show
Hey,
America.
Bill.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Bill. I don't mean any disrespect, but the same thing. We're talking about an issue in this nation, racism, that impacts and affects, continues to be at the root of many things that happen in this country. And so I don't want to, there's a time that we'll talk about Donald Trump and those things.
Okay, well, can I make a comment
Yes, sir.
on racism?
Yes, sir.
I'll run with that.
Yes, sir.
Look at how we joined ranks in the 60s to march against racism. Look how we did it. Look how we walked, and I shouldn't say we. I was I was involved, but not that great. But look how they marched in the heart of Mississippi, Alabama. They went into the heart of the beast, and they marched, and they won. Why did they win? Because the numbers, they just kept coming.
So, Bill, let me ask you, do you think that what happened during that time, do you see any correlation today? Do you think that today we've come so far that racism is not an issue, not a problem in our nation anymore?
No, you remember Bull Connors?
Absolutely.
You know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely.
Okay. We've got another Bull Connors in the White House. Well, we know how we dealt with the last Bull Connors. This is how we're going to deal with this Bull Connors.
Hey,
you
Bill,
know what I mean?
yeah.
Same thing.
Hey, Bill, thank you very much for the call. Reggie, you want to respond to Bill?
Well, I think that Bill has to understand. I'm from Mississippi. I was born in Mississippi. I was born in a town where we had separate swimming pools for Black and white kids. Many years after the civil rights movement ended, the swimming pools there were still segregated. And we talk about how we came together. We didn't come together. White people decided to join force. A small segment of the white community decided to come to Mississippi and join forces with the Black people who've been fighting for equality for their entire lives. That was not a reflection of how most white Mississippians felt. They were beating the hell out of Black and white people in Mississippi. They were killing Black and white people in Mississippi. So it wasn't this, kumbaya moment where everybody came together, as people like to try to pretend the civil rights movement was just kumbaya moment where we all came together. No, that's not what happened in reality. Some white people crossed ranks and joined forces with Black people, but most of them didn't. And if you look at the Mississippi of today and the politics of Mississippi today, it's not much different than it was in 1965 when I was born. It's not, the reality. The reality is that things haven't changed all that much, even though we like to believe that as a country because it makes us look better. But the reality is, come on, man, you cannot talk to Black men and tell us that things are so much better, or that, if we want to fix things, we got to do what we did in the 1960s. This isn't the 1960s anymore.
Reggie, if you look at the economic reality of Blacks in America today, contrast that with whites, it's almost as horrible as it was back in the 1950s and 60s. And people may not want to believe that, but if they look it up, they'll find out it's a fact.
Yeah,
and
one
so
of,
and
one of the yeah, you're right, Earl. And one
oh,
of the
go ahead, Reggie.
things that Dr. King was working on at the end of his life was looking at, economic inequality in America and addressing that, with his Poor People's Campaign before he was assassinated. That was the main issue he wanted to focus on. And if we look at the data, it's clear that, in many respects, Black people are worse off now than they were back in the late 1960s. For instance, here in Milwaukee, if you take a look at reports by the UW-Milwaukee Center for Economic Development, it shows clearly that Black people are very far behind white people in economics. Here in Milwaukee, we're worse than every other major city in the country by all those measures. I really advise people to look at those reports of African-American well-being, and you can see very clearly that we have a long way to go and that issue was not solved by the civil rights movement.
All right, let's go. Khaled, you're up next.
Oh, okay. I got three aspects of a question. I don't know which one you can deal with this amount of time, but in the older days, they used to refer to African American boys at the time as a bald eagle, a dying breed. I like your opinion on that if you have one. The second one would be, Curtis Mayfield came out with a song in the earlier days, Mighty, Mighty Spade and Whitey. You speak of the crumbling towers. Do you think that these crumbling towers are crumbling today as was in the past? And my third aspect was as referred in the Lamont Kendrick's thing at the NFL when he inferred about the Squid Game that's being applied today on America, which is also includes, I think, middle class poor whites. So I don't know which one you can comment on.
Okay,
so, I was asking you.
Let's
give him a shot, Brother Khaled. Thank you very much, Mr. Reggie.
Yeah, thank you, Khaled. Appreciate that. Listen, as far as economics, listen, one of the things that Americans just are so misinformed about or uninformed about completely is that all of us as Americans have suffered greatly economically based on where we were 50 years ago. All Americans are making less money than they were making 50 years ago. That trend has been consistent over a number of years, regardless of who was in the White House. It didn't make a difference.
Right.
Those trends. And part of it is the fact that, America decided to attack unions and destroy unions. Union jobs were the jobs that created the prevailing wage in communities. So if you were working at a non-union shop, you had to, as the owner of that non-union shop, you had to bring your wages up to match the union wages in order to get employees. And so because we've destroyed unions, we have Americans making less money than they made before. I just did a talk the other day with some school children. I showed them that in Milwaukee in 1970, for instance, Earl, you know this very well. Black people in Milwaukee in 1970 had the 7th highest median family income in the country for Black people. We made the equivalent of what would be about $50,000 in today's money in 1970, but the median family income for a Black family in Milwaukee today is about $31,000. So that's that we move backwards.
Reggie, and you made that money without even a high school diploma.
Mm-hmm.
You were able to live a middle class lifestyle, and live the American dream, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's 1970. I know that's my life. That's the story of my life, and I always try to tell people, it's not myself alone. That's the story of the lives of many people who live in rural America, because they had the paper mills, they had industry in their towns as well. And all of that left. And it was both Democrats and Republicans both who ushered that in, right? And so it was not either Democrat or Republican. They both agreed to that. And everybody's been trying to play catch up ever since. Only we hear about rural America suffering and those kind of things. We don't hear about Black suffering in the cities. 855-752-4842. Reggie Jackson's my guest on the Earl Ingram Show.
Song and dance, you got to work and fight to give it a chance. But if the rain comes down on us and there ain't no place to run, we can just come around south with a blanket of love. Wait till the morning.
All right, welcome back to the last few minutes of the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842, 752-4842, 855-752-4842. You know, I'm so happy to have this opportunity, you know, not just because it's Black History Month, but Civic Media. I want to thank the owners of Civic Media that allow this kind of dialogue and conversation over these airwaves that doesn't happen anywhere else. You know, I think in this nation, open and frank dialogue, that it's what is needed. You know, Reggie, I would say this before we go back to the phone lines. We've got this divide between rural white America and urban Black America. And as you stated earlier, we've all been, the same thing has happened to both of us. We've been taken advantage of by a greedy corporate greed that has expanded and taken away opportunities for the American people. This has happened, and instead of us joining forces together, you know, there's been this divide that has been orchestrated. And, you know, certainly has not benefited poor people who live in urban centers or poor people who live in rural places. You say what?
You know, Earl, you know, part of the challenge is that we have to get people to understand very clearly that we're all in this together in terms of Americans. American workers have become much more productive over the course of time, but our wages have not reflected that. And that's been something that's been ongoing for you know, for generations, actually. If you go back to, you know, a period of time that most Americans forget about, Earl, is the recessions of the early 1980s. 1980, there was a recession. but a much bigger and more deadly recession in 1981 through 82. That recession in 1981 through 82 was the largest recession since the Great Depression. And it did a tremendous amount of damage to American workers across the board, regardless of whether you were Black, white, Hispanic. Everybody was impacted negatively. We've never fully recovered from that recession in many respects, because that was the beginning of the loss of a lot of American jobs. Manufacturing jobs started to disappear in large measure during that recession. Millions of people lost their jobs, were out of work. And as people came back to work, they started to see that their wages would not be increasing regularly as they had been accustomed to. And we've been seeing this, this deflation in terms of wages that Americans make. We're making less money adjusted for inflation than we made 50 years ago across the board.
Well, Reggie, and you are absolutely correct, because at the root of it was the destruction of private unions, right? They did away with private unions, which made sure that we were able to live those middle-class lifestyles. Let's go to Tom from LA. Tom, good morning. You say what?
Good morning. As a gay white male, I know my white privilege. And this is my message to all of the white straight males and even straight white females out there. You know what? When you have, this is the way I understood diversity, equity, and inclusion. It meant that I was safe in the workplace. It meant that people couldn't just go along and say either jokes about Black people, jokes about gay people, jokes about whoever, women. That was the whole point, I thought, of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And myself, as a very competent, smart person, I want to work for a company that actually has diversity, equity, and inclusion, because I can guarantee you, I will wipe the floor with any white straight man in terms of work ethic and everything else that goes along with it. So to me, diversity, equity, and inclusion means that we want a diverse workforce. And you know what? The more diversity there is, the better the country is. The more differences of opinion are, the better the country is, and the better that the middle class does, because you're not just dealing with white oligarchs or head of white corporations. That's the good old boy network that doesn't give a crap about its employees. Same thing when I was working for a company here in California.
Hey, Tom.
And it finally came up.
Tom, I'm sorry, man. We've reached the end. Sorry, you couldn't let you finish up, but we're out of time. Hey, Reggie, man, thank you. I'm calling on you again.
Yeah, absolutely, Earl.
Man, this is the only way we can address what is happening in this nation is frank dialogue, right? Open and frank dialogue. And thank you for always presenting that from the perspective of a man who clearly knows what he's talking about, who's done the study, and who's been to the different places and had those kind of relationships. Thank you. We'll talk again soon. Thank everybody who made this show go. As always, I couldn't do it without you, Carti, man. Thank you. Thank you to the listening audience. No better listening audience than the one I have. I believe that in my heart. Up next, Jane Madnair, Greg Bach, Madnair on air. Hey, enjoy 50 degrees. See you guys on tomorrow.
That's the way love goes. Then there's a time, seems like you'll never find someone willing to love you. Keep on looking, you'll soon discover a mighty love will sometimes make it weep and moan. A mighty love, you see it all lay by the telephone. 'Cause you're all alone, you need a mighty love. Yeah. Some say that you're sure to find true love and peace of mind at the end of a rainbow. There's no sign in the sky to follow, 'cause that's the way love goes.